you think you've had a rough start. Before they ever stepped under the bright lights of the UFC octagon, many fighters lived through situations that would break most people. We're talking about sleeping in cars, digging in sand mines, surviving abuse, battling addiction, running from the law, and somehow still rising to the top of the fighting world. This isn't just a story about fighting, it's a story about survival, about grit, about refusing to quit no matter what life throws at you. These are the craziest UFC origin stories ever told, and they prove that legends aren't born in the cage, they're made long before it. Mark Hunt, from pain to power. Mark Hunt grew up in New Zealand in a large Samoan family, but his childhood was far from peaceful. His father was violent, often beating Mark and his siblings so badly they couldn't go to school. Mark still recalls the smell of cleaning products, triggering dark memories from those years. To deal with the pain, Mark turned to street fighting. One night outside a nightclub, he knocked out several men in a brawl. A bouncer saw it all and invited him to a gym. That invitation changed everything. Mark trained in Muay Thai, became a world champion in K1 kickboxing, and eventually joined the UFC. His walk-off knockouts and iron chin became legendary. Mark's story reminds us that even in the darkest places, greatness can begin. Francis Ngannou, digging for dreams. In Cameroon, Francis Ngannou was working in sand mines by the time he was 10 years old, just to help feed his family. He dreamed of boxing, but everyone told him to be realistic. One day, he took a leap of faith. With no passport and almost no money, he began the dangerous journey to Europe. He walked through deserts, faced hunger, and crossed borders under constant threat. After several failed attempts, he reached Europe, but ended up in a detention center. Eventually, he found his way to France, homeless and hungry. A gym took him in. Coaches saw something special. That something grew into one of the most feared fighters in MMA history. Francis didn't just punch his way to the top, he clawed his way out of the sand mines and built a legacy with his own hands. Ian Heinisch, from smuggler to cage fighter. Ian Heinisch was a promising wrestler from Colorado, whose life spiraled out of control. When his family lost their home, he turned to dealing. Caught with thousands of pills, he fled the country and began smuggling cocaine in Europe. It all caught up to him. He was arrested in Spain and thrown into prison. But behind bars, something clicked. He got clean, trained daily, and studied Spanish. When he was released and returned to the US, Ian turned his life around through MMA. From hiding from the law to chasing his dreams, Ian's transformation is a true redemption story. Ken Shamrock, built by survival. Known as the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock's life began in chaos. After being abandoned by his father, he was stabbed by age 10 and shuffled through foster homes. At 14, he arrived at the Shamrock Ranch, a home for troubled boys. Bob Shamrock gave him structure and introduced him to sports. Ken channeled his rage into wrestling and football, and later into fighting. He became a pioneer in MMA. He was competing in Japan before becoming a star in the early UFC. His legacy isn't just about titles, it's about how fighting gave him a purpose when nothing else could. Jose Aldo, scarred and unstoppable. Jose Aldo's story begins with a scar on his face, a burn from falling onto a barbecue grill as an infant during a family dispute. He grew up in the favelas of Brazil, often going without food or electricity. At 17, he left home with nothing but determination. He trained at a gym where he often slept on the mats because he couldn't afford rent. Through sheer willpower, he rose through Brazil's fight scene, dominated in WEC, and became the first UFC featherweight champion. Aldo didn't just fight opponents, he fought hunger, fear, and poverty. Alex Pereira. From bottles to belts. Alex Pereira started working in a tire shop at 12 and drinking soon after. He struggled with alcoholism into adulthood, feeling lost and stuck. Then, one day, he walked into a gym and discovered kickboxing. That decision changed his life. Alex became a 2-division world champion in Glory Kickboxing, known for his brutal knockout power. Eventually, he transitioned into MMA and quickly made waves. His journey is a blueprint for how fast life can change when you find your purpose. Jorge Masvidal, backyard brawls and big dreams. Growing up in Miami, Jorge Masvidal dealt with a father in prison and a mother working long hours just to keep them afloat. Even lived in a car at one point. To make money, Jorge fought in unsanctioned backyard brawls that were filmed and posted online. From there, he made his way into professional MMA and carved out a name for himself with a mix of grit, charisma, and knockout power. He made history with one of the fastest knockouts in UFC history and became a fan favorite around the world. Kimbo Slice, the street legend. Born Kevin Ferguson, Kimbo Slice came from the rough neighborhoods of Florida. After losing his home in a hurricane, he lived in his car and took whatever jobs he could find. He gained viral fame through street fight videos that showed his raw, terrifying power. But Kimbo wasn't just a brawler, he had heart, charisma, and a dream. He eventually turned pro, joined MMA, and became a cultural icon. His story is still celebrated today as one of the most unique in fight history. Charles Oliveira. From hospital beds to world titles. As a child in Brazil, Charles Oliveira suffered from health conditions that nearly left him unable to walk. Doctors didn't think he'd live a normal life, let alone become an athlete. But Charles defied expectations. A neighbor introduced him to jiu-jitsu, and he never looked back. He fought through poverty, injuries, and setbacks until he rose to the top of the UFC lightweight division, earning a reputation for his incredible submission skills. For Charles, the fight was never just in the octagon, it was in every breath he took growing up. Matt Brown, the Immortal. Matt Brown survived a heroin overdose, flatlined, dead for nearly 2 minutes. Then he came back and never looked back. He got the nickname, the Immortal, and started fighting. No fancy gyms, no polished style, just raw toughness. Over time, he became one of the most durable and feared welterweights in UFC history. Matt's story is living proof that second chances exist, and they can be violent, beautiful, and unforgettable. Court McGee, clean and fighting. Court McGee was a high school wrestling standout who fell into painkillers and eventually heroin. He overdosed and was clinically dead for 8 minutes. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. He entered recovery, rebuilt his life, and won the Ultimate Fighter. For him, every fight is about more than just winning. It's about staying sober, staying alive, and showing others it's possible. These UFC stars didn't just fight in cages. They fought through trauma, poverty, addiction, and fear. Some were written off. Some were locked up. Some nearly died. But all of them refused to let their origin stories define their endings. They turned pain into power. They turned breakdowns into breakthroughs. They proved that toughness isn't just about punches. It's about getting back up when life hits hardest. So next time you see a fighter raise their hand in victory, remember, they already won long before the fight ever started.